fully 30 million Americans are self-employed today, 30 million. And this original package had nothing for them. Nothing, zero, zilch, no, nothing. So, because if you're self-employed, you only get paid when you make money. So where is the payroll? These are the kind of things that come up. So that's where things stand today. I'm hoping that the next one will be a kinder, gentler version. Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sree Iyer. We are going through some very difficult times. There is no precedent to say how the world should behave, and each country is trying to do the best it can to cope with this coronavirus. And let us try and map out how India stands vis-a-vis the United States and the China, the two big countries whose economies are bigger than India in terms of PPP, and what does it mean? What are the things that India needs to do? To discuss all these things, we have Professor M D Nalapat in his avatar as an economist. Remember, he's a gold medalist from Mumbai University, so he's no slouch in economics either. Professor Nalapat, welcome to PGurus channel.
Thank you very much, Sree.
Professor Nalapat, United States came out with $2.2 trillion of different packages. And I can tell you the one that interested me most was the one for small businesses, which was $350 billion. And what we were all supposed to do was we were supposed to apply for this loan, which started out at 0.5% and then ended up at 1%. And we were supposed to apply for it through the banks that had our accounts. Guess what? Within a half an hour of the window opening, the thing closed. And my bank, based in California, perhaps it's because it has to travel a little farther, didn't even get a chance to put out the email saying that now you can apply. So our window didn't even open before it was closed. So now they're back again trying to come up with what is called as the CARES 2. And this is the fourth infusion of cash that is being debated upon right now. And for some strange reason, this one, the Democrats are trying to dig in a little bit, and I think rightfully so, because in the previous one, it was a Senate bill, and they sort of ramrodded it through because they were trying to make it look like if you don't sign up for this, then the American people will never forgive you. This is a rhetoric that both parties involved in, so let's not try to make it as if the Republicans were the bad guys here. I'm just trying to set the context here. So this is where United States stand. This week, they expect another rollout, and this one might have a little bit more of an organized stimulus package for small businesses. Fully 30 million Americans are self-employed today, 30 million. And this original package had nothing for them. Nothing, zero, zilch, no, nothing. So, because if you're self-employed, you only get paid when you make money. So where is the payroll? So these are the kind of things that come up. So that's where things stand today. I'm hoping that the next one will be a kinder, gentler version. But what do you think is happening in India and in China, and also how do you see all these things?
Well, in the US, it's very clear, Sree, that the people who drafted this particular bill of $350 billion, basically they are corporate people, or they're individuals who have never, maybe they're professors, maybe they're civil servants, and either professors or civil servants. They haven't set up companies. They get salaries, and they would never probably have ever, talked to too many people who are even self-employed. So frankly, it shows the utter lack of genuine participation in the framing of policy. You have $350 billion and you leave out self-employed people. Secondly, you create a window which shuts almost as soon as it opens. It means somebody out there is either extremely stupid or somebody is basically trying to target this money away from self-employed people into places like, as you correctly said, companies large and small.
Now, see, here's another twist to all this. Almost, I would say, majority of the Fortune 500 companies are no longer incorporated in the United States. They are incorporated instead in Ireland and other tax haven or tax benefit countries. So that begs a bigger question. Why do these companies even need a SOP? I mean, they don't even want to accept that they are US based. They derive their ideas from the United States. Their majority of their workforce is in the United States. I mean, I can go on and on. I don't want to rant on this a lot more. But my point in all these things is there's something really rotten in the state of Washington, D.C. And the Democrats are not really, shining a torch to all these things. I am politically an independent. I carry no brief for either the Democrats or the Republicans. I say it as I see it. Now, at least the United States is trying something. How are things in India, sir?
Well, let's again continue a little bit with the United States, because China and the United States are two countries I've been studying for more than 30 years, and I have a lot. I mean, a lot of assessments of the United States. In my opinion, frankly, this may sound counterintuitive, but I think Bernie Sanders would have been a much stronger person to take on Donald Trump than Joe Biden. But the reality is, Bernie Sanders went and aligned himself with the Wahhabis. And he took up positions on specific issues, including India, which were plainly from the Wahhabi stable. And a lot of Wahhabis, including that Ilhan Omar and others, flocked to his, basically his bandwagon. And I think that is what really demolished Bernie Sanders completely, because he put up a humiliatingly weak performance in a lot of these debates against Joe Biden. So far, Joe Biden is concerned, he is frankly part of the Washington of the past. And I'm not very sure that he's going to be able to take on Donald Trump. Now, people say that Donald Trump is going after Joe Biden because Joe Biden is the strongest candidate against him. I think Donald Trump is a very smart man. He's pretending that Joe Biden is the strongest candidate against him because he knows Joe Biden is much weaker. That is, if Joe Biden does not, have a balanced ticket, and one part of balanced ticket, several weeks ago I mentioned, now once it was clear that Biden was going to become the candidate, even before Bernie Sanders conceded, that Kamala Harris should be a good running mate of his. The fact is, Joe Biden has succeeded largely because he was the vice president of Barack Obama. All his past sins were washed out by being vice president of Barack Obama. And I think Kamala Harris would be an ideal choice as vice president. It will also balance the ticket in terms of people who are completely, old Washington and people who want to do some reform. So I hope Biden chooses Kamala Harris. If he goes in for Amy Klobuchar, it basically means he's taking a lot of his base for granted, and that might lead to a much lower participation in the election from the Democratic base. And once again, Donald Trump coming probably with a very sizable majority this time. Last time, Hillary Clinton got more votes, but this time, if Biden takes somebody like Klobuchar rather than somebody like Kamala Harris, I think Trump is going to be even more delighted.
Well, Professor Nalapat, I have a slight disagreement with you in that the way I see elections, presidential elections especially, since 2000, is in 2000, Florida decided who was going to be the US president. In 2004, it was Florida and Ohio. And in 2016, now you added 3 more states to it, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Now, it is my guess, and I could be horribly wrong about this, is that Biden has covered one of those swing states, which is Pennsylvania, and he is probably going to nominate the governor of Michigan, another lady, I forget the name, but she's very feisty. She's been standing up to Trump. I think he's going to nominate her because this is, again, the same old electoral math that as long as we cover the swing states, we're going to be good. See, Kamala Harris' candidacy doesn't add to Biden's kitty because California is horribly Democrat. I say that in fully advisedly because they went completely, to one side, whereas, people should be a little bit more nuanced in how they perceive these two parties. But anyway, be that as it may. So this is my guess.
Pardon me, but I just want to add my 2 bits worth to this, basically, or nickel's worth, or whatever you call it. And that is, look, Sree, you're colorblind. But some Americans are not colorblind. Let's be honest about it. And the reality is that A lot of people turned on Barack Obama precisely because of the fact that he had a much deeper tan than many other people. I'm only saying that you have the Democrats coming up with an all-white stable, frankly. Finally, the choice was between two old white males, Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden. So I'm saying you have to add diversity to a ticket. Secondly, I don't believe this theory about vice presidents adding strength to a ticket. I don't think so. It's a candidate that adds strength to a ticket more than the vice president. But the reality is a recognition of the fact that today America is no longer a whites only state. It's also a state where people of different colors have. And Kamala Harris, for example, she, in her marriage, in her life, in her activity, she has shown that she's also colorblind. So the reality is that we must ensure, in a sense, the whole world becomes colorblind. So from that point of view, that is what I suggested regarding Kamala Harris. But of course, he can say, look, I've got them, like Clinton did. Clinton said, I've got the African American vote in the bag. And when he became president, he was extremely harsh on them. A lot of the African Americans are in jail today because of what Clinton did. A lot of people lost their homes, because of what Clinton did. If you remember, 1999, Glass-Steagall was abandoned by Clinton.
Yes.
And he put in an act which basically was written by Wall Street. And Bush pushed it even further. Not only did he keep the Wall Street, but he made Wall Street write some additional chapters and paragraphs to that particular set of regulations. And as a consequence, you had the crash of 2008. Mr. Barack Obama was persuaded by Nancy Pelosi, who, by the way, doesn't come from the lower economic orders and probably has seen anybody worth less than $1 million in a living room for a long time, except people who come and meet her politically. It's a different matter. So the fact is that Barack Obama presided over a bailout where you had millions of Americans losing their homes to save a few dozen billionaires in hedge funds. To save a few dozen billionaires, millions of Americans lost their homes. So that is what has created the Bernie revolution. I know Joe Biden is in Delaware, and Delaware, as you know, is very,
it's a tax haven inside the US. It's a tax haven inside the US.
Exactly. So I think Biden, if he wants to atone for that, is not enough to say, oh, I was with Barack Obama, fine. But for heaven's sake, show that you've learned something from Barack Obama and choose Kamala Harris.
Well, we will know soon, won't we? Now, sir, we are casting our glance back to India. See, the 21-day lockdown perhaps was timely. Only, history will bear Narendra Modi out about the timing of that. Because clearly in the United States, if the same lockdown had happened a week earlier, a lot of things could have been better. I say that from experience because California shut down on the 13th of March. So they were like about 10 days ahead of the rest of the country. And California seems to have got the problem under control. We have to remember that the first, cluster started in California out of a cruise ship. So anyway, so what are your thoughts on where India is headed?
Well, I'd like to say that I fully agree with you that the lockdown was essential. 21-day lockdown was essential. And I think it's only because it's Prime Minister Modi who came on television and talked about the lockdown that almost all the people of India have accepted it with a certain amount of discipline. Now, you have a lot of news reports in the Indian media and the media where you are and in other parts of the world talking about these anarchic, indisciplined Indians. Almost as though, frankly, they are Winston Churchill's buddies writing about the non-cooperation movement under Mahatma Gandhi. The fact is, Indians have shown through the lockdown that they can be fully disciplined. Now, the point is, Sree, you have a second phase of lockdown, and I think there is no doubt that we probably need to continue the lockdown for some time. Of course, in a different manner from what we have, learning the lessons of this lockdown. But one thing is there, a lot of people have suffered a lot because of this lockdown. Many jobs have been lost, incomes have been lost, livings have been strained. So I'm sure government would have made an assessment of these kind of losses. So the next phase of the lockdown, something has to be done to ensure that these people are looked after. You can't go in for another 15 days of the same kind of lockdown without some conditions and codicils to make sure the lessons learned in these 21 days are not basically operationalized through measures to ensure that a large part of the suffering that has taken place, and undeniably there has been suffering, a large part of that is ameliorated during the next 15 or 21 days of the lockdown. If Prime Minister Modi wants a further lockdown, if he comes on television, I'm certain that the people will accept it. But I think it's also important to ensure that the people, these 21 days, the people who are suffering, the different kinds of suffering, they need to be looked after. And I think that is very important in the next phase of the lockdown itself.
Absolutely, sir. And as we tape this conversation, which will be out in a very short amount of time, we also are finding out that the Commerce Ministry has issued guidelines that all industries in India are to open tomorrow. And there's a list of which ones have to be open. They're basically saying that you have to go and open shop. So this is sort of, in my opinion, an indication that the lockdown may not last beyond the next 2 weeks. So in other words, from 1st May, my guess is that India is going to be open for business. Let's hope that comes true. And is there anything else you would like to add, Professor Nalapat?
No, I want to say that, I have great confidence in Prime Minister Modi, and I've had for some time, in fact, from 2006, and that confidence has never wavered, frankly. I mean, it's not a secret. In 2013, for example, I issued some public warnings about some individuals and saying that, look, please be careful. I think your government should ensure that such individuals are not put in the government. They were put in the government. And I think, a certain amount of blowback came from that. I have no regrets about that. I believe I was right. And I think after 6 years now, a lot of people who at that time thought I was wrong are now telling me I was right. So I'm not saying he does everything perfectly, but believe me, this is a man who loves India. This is a man who comes from the heart of India. I've seen him interact with some of his family members. I've seen him, very few times, of course, but up close. This is a man who loves this country. And therefore, I can tell you, Sree, I believe in him. I believe in his leadership. And yes, he's made mistakes. And if we are true friends of his, we'll point out the mistakes. I have done that. You've done that. But I can only say that, Prime Minister Modi, if he decides that there has to be an extension of lockdown, the people of India will support that extension. But I am confident that Prime Minister Modi will ensure that a lot of the issues that have come up in this lockdown, in this 21 days, will be resolved in this coming lockdown, whether it's 15 days or 21 days. And what you're telling me now is indicative of that.
Thank you very much, Professor Nalapat. And as always, viewers, please subscribe to our channel and donate to our channel. And we'll be back with more insightful interviews such as this one. Professor Nalapat, thank you very much.
Thank you.